Welcome to Psychic Girls Next Door. We're back.
Hello.
Yay!
Three.
I know it's been so long.
It has been long. What have you been up to? I mean, it's been
Oh my goodness.
like almost a year, right?
Exactly. I think our last episode was maybe March, April, I
Yeah.
think that's when we last published and uploaded. And I think it's been quite a year.
Yeah.
For a lot of us, and I think we both needed, a break, a time just to take care of ourselves and do some self-reflection and just focus on our personal lives too. And that's what we're hoping to share in this episode when we're back. Like, where have we been? Are
Yeah.
you guys still alive? That's
Yeah.
what, a lot of people were asking me, when are you guys returning? Are you alive? I'm like, yes, we are. We look forward to coming back. And there's, nothing like as the right time as right now. So
Yeah. Talk about divine timing. I feel like when you have these really wonderful creative projects and like creative partners, like I feel very blessed that Lily's my creative partner with this. You also have to factor in like the stuff happening behind the scenes. And sometimes like your creative channels can get clogged or distracted if you have other things happening in your life that may not be like creating space for you to channel in the right way, whatever that means for you. Right. So I think like
yeah.
at the time, I was like, what were we doing this time last year? What were you doing this time last year? Let's start with you.
Oof, I was in a really tough situation. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. I'm just going to kind of summarize because I think it would be like a 3-hour podcast episode, just going to like every single little thing. And you've been there, so
Yeah.
everything that I've gone through. But, as you were saying, people, I guess, sometimes forget that we're humans. And we do have, a life behind what we put out, like on a podcast platform or on social media. But in my case, I had a lot of housing issues. And it was just pretty awful, just dealing with people that made very poor decisions and it affected everyone around them. So, and that caused me so last year I moved out 3 times. That was one of the things that happened.
That's crazy. Like, I mean, not crazy, but like that's a lot of change in your
Yes.
like, how can you feel grounded if you're constantly in a situation, like a living environment where you energetically can't feel grounded because of circumstances around you? I think your environment, especially your home environment, is so important to have like,
I think it's just, it's essential.
Yeah,
right?
just have a solid foundation and peace, like having a home that you can come home to and like it's reliable, like the environment is reliable. Yeah.
And you feel safe, right? Isn't it so interesting, like how we just like take for granted things like that, like just being able to go home and just feel at peace with yourself and have like a safe haven to go back to.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that last year. It was just like, going from one place to the next where I felt very unwelcomed and unsafe. And it caused me, to feel, really in a pretty dark place, I want to say. I think from, the beginning of 2024 up to like August of 2024, I think this first like 7 months, it was just like a mix of going through like the dark night of the soul, being at the rock bottom, like everything that people have like, a word for those places, going through like a dark tunnel and not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I've gone through all of that. Like it was pretty deep in terms of like going through like very challenging situations. Granted, I have to say that I feel very blessed that I've had like a lot of support in this time frame. I had friends like you. They were always there for me, supporting me. I had therapy. I had a community. I had family that were very supportive. So I really had to rely on a lot of different tools and techniques and people around me to get through those times, because I was clinically diagnosed with severe anxiety, PTSD, and depression in that time frame.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly difficult. But I moved to a different state. That's why, yeah. So you can notice Shannon and I were on this like online recording and platform. We're not kind of like in the same room. In spirit, we are in the same room, right?
Yeah, always.
But yes, but like physically, we're in different states. So I moved into a total different state. So I'm living in the Midwest. And so it was kind of like taking a big leap of faith too. Just going from like a place that I lived in California for like so many years, decades, by now. And then deciding it was just time to kind of close that chapter and start a new one. And of course, like I'm also lucky that I do have family where I'm at. And they're also very supportive with my move. So when I moved here, it was actually the time that I felt safe.
Yeah.
And I felt like, oh my gosh, like I'm okay now. I can kind of like sit back and just kind of like release like whatever was going through inside of me.
Yeah.
And also like physically away from all those awful people that I'm not going to mention, not going to go into just because I don't think they deserve. They don't deserve any space and time here talking about it. But definitely those people, they taught me a lot of different lessons. I mean, do I wish I had never met these people? Absolutely. Absolutely. Do I wish I never had gone through all the situations? Of course, because no one wants to go through like challenging and awful situations. But, looking back, because it's hard when you're in it, right? Like when you're in the situation, it's just so hard to kind of see your way out and see, kind of like that light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But I think when you go through it and when you're on the other side, you're like, okay, I did it. Like I survived. I'm in a much healthier environment. And so when I moved, beginning of September, that's, kind of like when I finally made the move to a different space. That's when things really start to shift, job-wise, meeting new people, different opportunities. So, so this is kind of where I've been in the last few months, with just like in this totally new space, new energy, frequency, vibration, whatever you want to call it. But of course, like going through all these transitions and adjusting to all of it, it's also been a process, because it's not something that like, it just happens,
right, immediately, and you're like, great, this is wonderful.
Oh yeah,
perfect.
Exactly, it happens overnight. There's a lot of tears that are shed. There's a lot of moments of kind of that you get triggered, and still I still work with my therapist. I've been working with a therapist through all of this time, to get into a healthier mental and emotional state. And also using all the healing tools and techniques that you and I have, learned throughout the years too. And of course, always going back into my meditation practice. And so all of that has been very helpful. But, granted, a lot of people will say, well, you guys work as you're all like spiritual, you're all this and that. People think that you kind of got it all figured out, but like no one's got it figured out.
Yeah.
And would have been wonderful.
Right. Just because we can pick up on information that's like not necessarily being said out loud doesn't mean like we know what to do with that all the time. And I think that's completely normal. Like, we have these like gifts and abilities, and like, it's like sometimes I call it a party trick, like I like being able to tap into my spirituality. It's very part of my personality and my value system. and just like looking at things energetically, and like it helps me in my day job as well. And it's just every aspect of life, right? Like if you are a
Yeah.
naturally intuitive person, if you pick up on the vibe, like if a vibe is not right, and you're like, you're like, am I crazy or is it just me? Like, you're not crazy. Like, if you're picking up on some weird energy being projected from somebody else, trust that. And also, like, sometimes it takes a while to go through the experience to kind of have that, like, all right, now I got to get out of this situation. Like when you were
Yeah.
going through that, just from my, being your friend and being your podcast partner, like I saw how it was just impacting you so much on a negative level. And like
Mhm.
it was like clogging the queue, right? Like you're just constantly had this like film of like muck of, kind of like dread. Not, maybe I was picking up on something else, but dread might have been a good description for some of the living dynamics that you were experiencing, depending on the day. Because I'm sure some days were better than others. It's only like when it reaches kind of a boiling point, and like a consistent boiling point, because it can go up and down, right? Like the energy, the vibration of
Yeah.
your living space, like it can be fine, 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 normal, normal, and then all of a sudden something crazy or like something triggering will happen, and then you're like, oh, I got to keep that in mind. I got to like, and then it becomes like so impacted and clogged, and you're like, okay, I got to make this change. And as your friend,
Yeah.
like I'm so proud of you for making that change. Like
Thank you.
your vibration and like how you radiate is just so lovely, and like it just all the time. But like you in that situation, I was like, this is not healthy for you. And like, I think
Yeah.
I'm glad you recognize that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think in life, it's also one of those things that, because the universe will send you messages and nudges and things like that. And sometimes we don't listen or you override it. You're like, things are fine. Where
Sure.
I live
Yeah.
is fine, whatever. And you're comfortable. But sometimes it might kick you in the butt,
Yeah.
and you might get into situations that are incredibly challenging and difficult so you can actually make the change in your life. So it's going to literally take you out of your comfort zone
Yeah.
and kind of push you, into where you're meant to go. Because I do believe too, if I haven't gone through all these things, I mean, I wouldn't be, of course, where I am today.
Right.
So it all served a purpose that as much as it sucked going through all of that, but it did serve a purpose.
Yeah.
Um, but I also believe too, especially when people when you work with, as a healer and when you have, work in the space of spirituality, a lot of these experiences too, they really like ask you to go at a deeper level,
Mm-hmm.
within yourself, because going through all of this also made me become more aware of myself
Yeah.
and know myself on a much, much like deeper level that I haven't even known that I could have like gone through, or that I was able to even uh, have abilities to even go through all of that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you don't have like negative thoughts I mean, I just gonna be very honest. I had very dark thoughts
Yeah.
going through all of that. Like, honestly, like there were a lot of moments that I didn't want to be in the physical plane to,
Right. Right. Now
it,
that's real.
you know,
And I think a lot of
and that's,
people relate to that. Yeah.
yeah, that you just so down into it that it's just like it's really hard to like find the strength to kind of really pull yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think in my case, it was just kind of like you just kind of have to show up for yourself. You just
Yeah.
show up for yourself, whatever ways that you can, even if you like, it's like you're feeling, you know, so down, and whatever it is, you just keep showing up, however it looks like to you, however it feels.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest thing also um, that push me. I would say push. I don't know if push me was the right word, but it's also the
Encouraged you or like,
encourage. Yes, exactly. Encourage me was to also ask for help,
yeah.
because for me, it's when you you've been living by yourself for so long, especially me, like, my family's in a different country.
Yeah.
I've been living on my own for so long and just kind of being that person. Oh, I can do all of this all alone, that type of
Right,
thing.
right. The
And
independent
that's,
like
yeah,
curse. Yeah.
exactly. The independent woman type of thing. And then you realize, like, no, I need to ask for help because I just cannot do this on my own. So for me, that was also pretty big to also ask for help, for professional help,
Yeah.
but also ask help from my friends. Like, listen, I don't know if I can do this. I
Yeah.
just need a shoulder to cry today, that type
Yeah,
of thing.
totally.
So that was also a
Yeah.
big thing for me to like be more comfortable and more vulnerable in that space
Yeah.
of
Like,
just asking for help.
yeah, it's okay to
Yeah,
not be okay. And like,
absolutely.
just because you're not feeling your best self like one day, it doesn't mean like that's going to be your identity moving forward. Like, I think like if you are so used to like being consistent, right, with everything, I would say you're a very consistent person. Like when I think of you, like your energy you show up like very similarly like most days. But then, as you're going through this experience, like obviously, like I personally, like for everyone, I am open to people showing up as they are. And
Yeah.
sometimes that also can be kind of toxic as well. Cause like people can show up wild and out and I'll be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll just like make it work. And like, I'm kind of dealing with like some work dynamics in my new job that way. And like I'm like, okay, like how can I navigate this? But with you, like as you're going through the situation, if you notice like, oh, I'm not showing up as consistently as I would like to, or this is causing me to feel a certain way that I'm not used to feeling and I don't want to feel, you can feel kind of like have that inner narrator, like the self critic, right? It can pop up and it can be like, why aren't you showing up this way? You're used to showing up
Yeah.
in a higher vibration. And then you're like, but I'm dealing with all of this. So it can kind of create that internal struggle.
Yeah.
Of,
Well, it's
yeah.
very hard because you're in survival mode,
Yeah.
right? All the time. And then just getting out of that space, it takes a lot of courage,
Yeah.
to get out of that and ask for help and
Yeah.
whatever means that you have to. Uh, but I would say that, now that I've gone through all of this, it's finally like when I moved out now, that I'm in a different environment, that I
Yeah.
started deep, like very deep healing.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was like getting out of that survival mode and now actually like going to this healing mode and just kind of going more to from survival to thriving, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of why you want to like shift your
Yeah.
energy. But it does take work
Yeah.
and it's not easy.
I,
Um,
I think like,
and
yeah.
you do need help. That's
Yeah.
basic.
Yeah. No, I think it's great that you have a community, you have your family where you're at now, and you also have like friends that you've made through that community. And I've seen like such a beautiful, like, new chapter unfolding for you just from my long distance wise, right? We FaceTime at least once a month and like make sure we stay in touch and like updated. But I think like the two things that you didn't have that you absolutely needed in order to even do that deep healing was psych safety and like just feeling physically safe also. And
Yeah.
then maybe a third thing, trust, like the trust with the environment or the people around you. And maybe you can kind of call that the same thing, but like
Yeah.
the safety and the trust was just not there. So I think you leaving and you going into an environment with people that you already knew you trusted, I think that was helpful and it set like a good new foundation and the space that you needed to be able to dive deep and focus on new areas of healing that you may not have had a chance to even look at or notice unless you had maybe gone through this situation. I know that's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of like I can see that now, like when I'm like out of that situation, where I am now,
yeah,
I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's 180,
yeah.
like
No, that's
where
great.
where things are now. But what about you? Like, where have you
Oh,
been? I mean, I know it, but we want to share with our listeners.
yeah. So last year, about this time, I was like, I had just started a new job. Like, I don't know, I was like 4 months into my job. I loved working where I worked at my last job. It was very chill. Like the people were really, they are very lovely. Like I got a new opportunity. I started my new job about a month and a half ago. It's like, it was way more money than I was making, and I needed to make more money. And that was the thing that kind of drove me to being open. And part of it was my own doing. Like I went on a 2-week trip to Europe with my sister last year, and it was amazing. And then I literally was in so many weddings and bachelorette parties.
Oh,
And
I remember that. It was almost like every month,
it
it was
was
like a different
it was kind of,
celebration.
yeah, it was like a double-edged sword, because it's like I want to show up for my friends, I want to be there for them. But then when you like come back to it, you're like, I just spent all of my extra money for that should have been for myself on these events for other people. And I think, I don't know if people talk about that enough. And I don't mean any like ill will towards the friends that I spent that money on. Like, but when you are a single person who, like, I'm nowhere in the vicinity of getting married or engaged or having a baby or whatever it is, I'm like, I'm not doing the societal standard life track, and I'm completely okay with that. But when you're not doing the traditional celebration-y things, it can be challenging, because then you're like, how can I show up for myself? How, like, it made me realize, like, that was kind of my lesson and journey last year. Like, be selective with what you say yes to. Literally, like, when we took a break from our podcast, I literally did not, I went into hermit mode from like fall up until today. Like, I'm still like kind of hermit mode. So it was nice to like be super, super selective with like, how am I spending my time, my energy, and my money? And those are like the three main resources that I've noticed that, time you cannot get back as a resource. Because time is also kind of made up, and time and money are all made up and kind of fake anyway. But like, if you are spending your money on things and people and places and events that are not going to kind of add more value into your life, if you find yourself doing it, and whereas like, oh, I'm motivated by guilt, right? Like, if I don't show up for this person, then they might be mad at me. Or if I don't, do this thing, then I might not get invited again. That's kind of like looking at it through a scarcity mindset. And I found myself, not with all of the things I said yes to, but with a lot of the things I said yes to, I was like, if I don't say yes, they're going to be mad at me. And I've been diving into my human design chart. And one resource that I found recently is that as a generator, so I'm motivated. There's something in my chart that says like, I'm motivated by guilt. And I find that so interesting.
That
So
is interesting.
yeah. So like, people can guilt trip me all the time, and I may not notice it. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to be motivated by guilt. But if you were into human design, like that's just part of my makeup, right? So like now that
Because if you're showing up as something that is not because you actually want to do it,
like, not, it's
not of
not
your
authentic.
own.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not authentic, right? Like you're showing up because I have to, or
Yeah.
because, and then feeling the blank. It's like it's never gonna be a great experience because there's always gonna be something
Right. Right. And I
that
found
is,
yeah. No, and I found myself getting annoyed. Like,
yeah, well, yeah, because
yeah.
because it's one of those things you're like, well, I'm not doing because I generally want to be there, show up for my friends, blah, 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 and I'm sure there were, opportunities like that too.
Totally. Yeah.
But there are also, I'm sure there were opportunities that were like, well,
Yeah.
didn't have to spend, or didn't have to expend all that
Yeah.
money, or
Absolutely. Yeah. There's, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm paying for it still. Like some of the things, like paying off credit card debt and like just kind of paying for it energetically too. Like, and I honestly, that's what it's, I'm bummed that, so when I took the job at my last job, I did take a pay cut of like 15K, and which is like $1,000 a month. So like at the time I like needed a job, like the job before, yes, I got paid well, but like I was not happy. It was not a good environment for me. And I was commuting an hour each way. There were just all these circumstances that just didn't work out they were so inconvenient, right? On top of like this really unhealthy work environment. And then for me, I've had a lot of like jobs that have had that pattern. You and I were literally talking about this earlier of like the pattern. So I'm an executive assistant, and I've literally at this point, I've in the mid 20s of the executives I've supported at like different tech startups. And I'm just like, it's an easy job on, looking at it. But then the most challenging aspect is the personalities. Like, how are they going to react if they're frustrated or angry? And so with our energetic gifts, I've been able to kind of like incorporate, like, I can read someone to filth if I need to. Like, but that's just like information I'm getting. And sometimes it's information I do not want at all. Like, I don't need to know that. I don't want to know that. And so there is some type of like sacrifice factor that I've been experiencing of like, what am I sacrificing? I think that's been like the common thread in these jobs. Like, I've always had to sacrifice something. Like, what if it was the commute that was like an hour each way? That's like that's sacrificing personal time. Having to go in an office when most of the tech jobs could be totally remote. That's also sacrificing personal time, and then money for parking. So I'm starting to see what are the patterns that I've had related to work? What are the patterns I've had related to spending money? Whether it's for things that I need to pay for or things that I want. And then realizing like, oh, if I'm feeling like uncomfortable, if I'm not like satisfied with something in my life, I like to shop because it's like a fun little treat, or like,
Well, I think that is the pattern.
That's the pattern. Spending,
That is the pattern.
yeah, spending money as a way to distract myself. And I feel like that 6 months of like social sabbatical I'm just calling it social sabbatical, that helped me immensely kind of just reset some of the financial patterns that just were not serving me. I think being mindful of my spending, like not being on certain subscriptions, not like that I didn't need, like just kind of recognizing like, what am I actually spending my money on? And then is it actually serving me? Or is this just something that I've always just been paying for, but I don't actually utilize it? So it's been like more of a lesson of like paying more attention to the resources that I have and the resources that I'm giving away. And that can also be like energetic resources too, right?
Both physically and energetically, right?
Yeah.
But as you can probably tell, I mean, both you and we've gone through a lot of transitions. That's what I would say it. And, I think just being here today is just such an accomplishment.
Yeah.
And, we do want to bring something, that you can all relate to it. And we also like in the space where we want to bring some new energy into this podcast, and just see how we want to like navigate moving forward. Of course, we're always open to like feedback and suggestions from our listeners, and kind of reconnect with everyone too.
Yeah.
And we'll be posting on social media, going back to
we're back. We're fully
we're back. Oh, to all our fun shenanigans, So now it's just gonna be, the first of many new episodes to come.
Yes.
So I'm very excited.
Me too. It's a new chapter. It's a new year. It's kind of a new phase in both of our lives of, where do we want to show up and how do we want to show up for ourselves? And I'm very excited to partner with you for season 3, and
Me too.
so much fun things. And I feel like a few trips are in our future. I'm not to be psychic, but
you guys have to stay tuned.
yes, exactly. Thank you so much for tuning in to season 3 of Psychic Girls Next Door. We missed all of you. We appreciate you listening, and we're so excited to go on this journey and co-create with our listeners and anyone who's interested in chatting with us. We each do healings in various modalities, but also just like if you want to make new friends, I'm in San Francisco. And then Lili, if you want to share where you are, you don't have to.
I'm in Colorado.
She's in Colorado. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, we're open to building community, and that's the whole point of this podcast, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
share, personal stories, your stories, and hopefully, you can relate to it. And, I think this is an open space.
Yes.
And the possibilities are endless too. But thank you so much for listening to us. We're so happy to be back, and we can't wait for our next episode.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Bye.